As per Gartner, by 2024, 3/4 of all large corporations will be using at least 4 low-code development tools. Hi, I'm Anu Mishra. I'll be discussing Mercury Systems' cloud-native application landscape as part of our DevSecOps initiative. While developing our digital thread roadmap, we realized we needed a solid platform that could handshake all data and business processes around our product. And we realized that we needed a merging of all these different technologies. And there was a need for a common interface that could link all bodies of product knowledge together. So we'll be covering how we recognize the need for a low-code platform. Why did we select Mendix? We had a choice. And embedded security in applications led us for rapid development around this product. And we also made sure that there was a drive value per stage of this digital transformation. And we're going to cover our execution strategy there. Now, before we get into our detailed presentation, I would like you to first watch this little video that shows what Mercury System does.
At Mercury Systems, we develop mission-critical technologies that help to make the world a safe and more secure place for all human beings. This is how we do it. We make the most sophisticated, cutting-edge Silicon Valley technologies profoundly more accessible to all customers and seamlessly customize them for today's most advanced aerospace and defense applications. We deliver uncompromised, trusted and secure processing solutions that are purpose-built to perform with absolute precision in extreme environments, under the most intense conditions, and in some of the most remote locations on Earth and in space. We transform more than 300 aerospace, defense, security and intelligence programs with proven commercial technologies that work flawlessly, reliably and predictably without ever losing sight of our ultimate goal: to make the world a better place for all. Because in the end, we don't just work for the aerospace and defense industry, we work for all of humanity.
Digital thread has ramifications across organization function, roles within programs, how we connect all different disciplines, and make a visual interpretation of this data as it flows across its life cycle. As designed models process, focus on design and analyze, and how do we maintain this information as it moves across all these different phases. So you can see this, flow in this diagram with so many different processes that a real, part or a product goes through. And we have to now simulate, let's say, a model thousands of times, within a day, perform topology optimizations. We have to deal with native CADs, electrical CAD drawings going through multiple reviews. We have release processes that's involved throughout the product lifecycle. Now, we also have to now select which one do we start with. It's a complex, challenge at hand. And we started our journey focusing on the top right quadrant, the engineering world, and then we connect. Where do we connect the dots and basically build layers of customization on PLM system for its share of data ownership? Do we build layers of custom workflows on our planning tools like Jira? Or do we build our layers of customization on PDM systems or system engineering tools like JAMA. But we are marching towards a model-based systems engineering that even involved further needs to connect these simulation tools, PLM systems and CAD systems together. Now, how much of dollar and time do we actually spend with these different systems? So users in one may not have the skills or access to use some of the other tools that we see in here. So many different applications and the user sets involved here. Focus of a mechanical lead is really on their own world of, let's say, a CAD platform, right? So we now needed something very simple and something fast. So finally, it was clear that we needed a low-code platform. So having established the need, came the next challenge. Which one is right for us? So we ended up selecting Mendix for its great integration capabilities, specifically around engineering systems. Its built-in DevOps capabilities, which I will later discuss in much more detail, and our ability to quickly turn around these proof of concepts with little or no self-training. Also, has CAD visualization on its roadmap because we wanted to make sure it's accessible to general users and it's easy to visualize and look at the thread as it moves along. So it's our choice of Kafka was already there on our vision and our roadmap. And it actually aligned with what Mendix had with their Data Hub roadmap. They were also going to use Kafka. And its support for cloud native environment really closed the deal for us because it aligned with our vision for DevSecOps. So with all said, our focus is on process development and less on making the product work and getting talking about the development challenges. From the word go, we plan to set up Mendix as our DevSecOps on-premises setup. So being in the defense and aerospace industry, security and regulatory compliance is of prime importance. So our pipeline had to orchestrate vulnerability scans, weaknesses on open source compliance, and continuously monitor security in our Kubernetes clusters. Now, Mendix had to be containerized and put up as a pod on our Kubernetes setup. When it came to execution strategy, we had to stick with Mendix tried and tested start, structure, and scale strategy. We just tweaked it to align with our DevSecOps initiative. So when it came to selecting where do we start, it's a big challenge to fulfill. But let's look at one high impact and low complex project to begin with that would demonstrate our first success in a very short span of time. So we identified a partner with Mendix certified developers who were also having skills in DevOps pipelines. Now, getting a taste for the first application was a key. We had to get something that spanned across the organization and should be quick to develop. So we created a skill set matrix tool within a week, and we successfully rolled it out. And between 2 weeks, we had something out there in production. Now, if you look at the structure, so how do we go from our first success to what's next? We had to now make the big leap. So we've selected a high impact, high complexity project to demonstrate our first large scale application. So at this time, we set up our CI/CD pipeline on-prem with Mendix completely functional. Now we had to build development skills internally as well. And then we had to go live with this application that would have integrations with multiple engineering systems. We had to ensure that DevSecOps continuous security monitoring was put in place after the deployment would be done. Now to continue to connect more systems, our then next steps would be to scale, which is to make sure our security policies are kept updated, and then identify the user stories for remaining steps of the product life that we just discussed during digital thread. Now, we had to then decide, okay, once we start putting in these stories out in action, we can start building up. So in future, once we start to scale up, we'll be able to leverage all that information, right? Build machine learning, IoT, predictive analytics, all those capabilities on this platform. So at this point, my colleague and our services partner from Mendix Data, Harish, will take you through our detailed architecture.
Thanks, Anu. Hi, everyone. My name is Harish Ramachandran. I'm from Mendix Data. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mendix. We've been in the business of open source services and solutions for the last 2 decades. For us, in the early days of open source, it meant we were doing more of the content management solutions and portals and Java-based frameworks. But today, when you look at where open source is kind of evolved, it is in the cloud-native architecture, the very vibrant Kubernetes ecosystem, and the CNCF, and basically a whole lot of the DevOps tools that goes with the cloud-native landscape. That's kind of one of the core focus areas of the company. We also do a lot of application rationalization using low-code platforms like Mendix, and we do a significant amount of RPA and automation type of applications as part of the digital transformation programs that enterprises are running. Today, we are going to talk a little bit more about what we do at Mercury Systems. At Mercury, I want to cover the 3 things surrounding our project, our program there. Number 1, talk about the solution requirements. Number 2, look at a little bit of the solution architecture and how this whole program's kind of been implemented. And finally, look at what were some of the core tenets based on which both the requirements and the solution architectures kind of coming together for the program. Okay, starting off with the solution and the requirements overview. Basically, the primary use case at Mercury is that of composite portal. So by this, what we mean is it's a portal where the engineers would kind of come to for everything that they need to get in terms of their daily activities. So the engineer's dashboard, if you will, that's what we are trying to build with Mendix in Mercury Systems. So some of the core business applications and processes that we are supporting here are surrounding the enterprise change management and part request and compliance and part search. These are kind of the core use cases that the engineers need the modern user interface and the modern applications to really perform their day-to-day jobs more efficiently. I'll come back a little bit more about some of the application functionality in my subsequent talking points here. To back it all, besides the application environment with Mendix, we do need a strong foundation for an enterprise architecture and an enterprise integration. And that's where we came upon the event-driven architecture and Kafka as the application environment that we will use in order to integrate Mendix with a lot of our system of records. Our systems of records in this case includes PLM for product line management, PDM for product data management, and other applications, including, for future phases, we do envisage application environments like the ERP, MRP, and MES kind of application platforms as well. Those are all common engineering applications which are the system of record for a lot of companies similar to Mercury Systems. One of the other architectures that we implemented here is to have a more performant data tier to represent large data sets from our backend systems in our Mendix app tier. So we went with MongoDB to represent large data sets like the part numbers. So we have hundreds of thousands of parts that are already created, and those need to be referenced in, for example, the change request. And that's what we are building with respect to having a data tier with MongoDB. And we've implemented the enterprise events that modify one or more of these systems of record and how they propagate these changes into our NoSQL database. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about the application functionality and security and what were some of the core challenges in building our application and how Mendix helped us realize the requirements. As an organization, we were moving forward with more of a project-based security. And basically what this means is one or more of these business processes pertain to a project. And when you have that, there is a set of actors that are assigned to the project, be it the project manager, the design engineers, the electrical engineering lead, the program manager, the documentation control. All those kind of various actors are set up at the project level. And they all are set up within our environment as the folks that can actually view some of these transactions. So in net, it translates into every transaction in Mendix does come up with its own workflow as well as with its security context. And that's pretty easy to implement in Mendix. This security layer is on top of whatever else you would normally do with respect to identity-based access and permissions and everything else that exists within the Mendix environment today. So that's what made the whole application environment more unique. We were looking for a platform that could actually help us realize this new architecture as opposed to having a fixed set of permissions based on the roles. We did want that to be something that's available at the record level, and that's what we enabled with Mendix. Moving on to the solution architecture and the cloud-native landscape. So I want to kind of step back a little bit and talk about what were some of the core architecture tenets for this particular program. Right at the outset, we clearly knew that we needed to build this cloud-native architecture. And for us, cloud-native meant that everything needed to be containerized. So Docker is our container environment. We extensively used the Mendix Docker build pack for building the Mendix app as containers. And that's how they're deployed within the production environment for Mercury. It's not just Mendix, which is going to be the containerized app. Every one of the other application tiers that I talked about, be it Kafka or the database that Mendix uses, as well as MongoDB for the large data sets that I talked about, they're all represented as containers within the same orchestration environment, which is Kubernetes in our case. And that whole architecture of trying to ensure that we have no single points of failure within our architecture, and we are able to scale depending on whatever is the functional scope and the scale requirements for a given use case. There are a couple of other technologies or products that you would need in order to kind of complete this architecture. One is the ingress controller, as you expose some of these containers to the secure cloud users. Note everything that I'm talking about here is all for access within a restricted application environment in in Mercury Systems. There is also another secondary use case where some of the data pipelines and APIs that we are building for enterprise systems to integrate with within this cluster, within this environment. For those APIs to be exposed to the outside world, we do now have that set up through an API gateway. So moving a little bit more into the CI/CD and the build pipeline, that was kind of the integral piece of the puzzle in order for you to operate this kind of a production environment with a cloud-native deployment architecture. So, like I said earlier, we extensively used the Docker Mendix build pack. We do this offline because everything that you see, including the CI/CD pipeline, is all running within a secure environment, which basically means that it's going through 2 firewalls. So it's not accessing the internet for any of these real-time connections. So this is an offline build that's happening. Jenkins is kind of running our build pipelines. We do some security scans with tools like White Source, and then subsequently we publish the containers into our private registry, which is our own JFrog Artifactory repository. And that's what the Kubernetes cluster pulls the Docker images from for deploying or for scaling any of these kind of application environments that we have here. That besides, we also have integration to the directory services, our corporate LDAP for authentication. We also have some extensive monitors and probes built into our cluster to monitor the health of our applications and ensure that we've got proactive trackers on every one of these application environments. And we also extensively use products for managing our configuration maps as well as secrets surrounding database passwords and things like that. So that kind of rounds up the solution architecture of how the Kubernetes clusters kind of set up in the cloud-native architecture landscape at Mercury. Today, this whole architecture is kind of running on Amazon AWS GovCloud, and we use our Kubernetes cluster is running on Amazon EKS, and we use ECR as well on some of the other projects for their container registry. So that's all I had with respect to solution architecture. Anu and I are available offline if you do need to chat about one or more of these solution scenarios. We'd be happy to share our experience and provide our perspective on some of these architecture paradigms that we are moving forward with. It is still early days for us. We do see a bunch of more apps within our pipeline in the horizon. Back to Anu now for the vision and what the roadmap entails with respect to our cloud-native landscape. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish. Now with that, we're going to now talk about what's coming up next. What do we, where do we go from here? So we need to extend our usage beyond engineering tools and applications. So we need to complete our automated test suite that we started off. Harish mentioned how we use Selenium to automate our test cycles. Now we need to build standards around this new low-code platform that we now have, right? And take it beyond what we have with the business processes and microflows. We need to explore CAD visualization and Data Hub features that's coming up soon. Now we also need to look at the metrics and reporting tools that we can develop over and above the data that we have now started gathering with this tool. So once we have built the physical product with its digital connections, the process that it took to get there, we can now leverage all the wealth of information and apply machine learning services to improve our products. I would like to thank Mendix and specifically, Oz, Kara, and Linda for giving me an opportunity to share our lessons learned with you today. And if if this was like a live session, a breakout session in a Mendix world, there could have been a lot more sharing if we were meeting in person. So feel free to contact me or Harish if you need any more details. Thank you.